guys, welcome back to Room 237. I'm back with another review, kind of a random review. It's one that I've wanted to do since I started this channel. Every time I would go to do it, I never ended up doing it. Then I would get on a kick of something else, and it just never seemed right. But I rewatched it tonight, and it's still one of my all-time favorite films. One of my all-time favorite horror films. Definitely a top 20 horror film. But before I get to that, I do want to give this disclaimer, as I did with the two other films of his that I've reviewed. Yes, I know who the director is. I know what the director did. I know everything about him. Any praise I give the film goes to the film itself or the filmmaker's filmmaking and directorial skills, not him as a person. I liked this movie even before I really knew who he was, and I do firmly believe that you can separate the art from the artist, but also, I find it strange if you really like something, then find out a fact about the person behind it to then not like it. Plus, this came out before his notorious crime. So, not that that makes it any better, but if you want to argue a film that came out after the fact, I guess I could sympathize with that. But this came out before, and it is widely regarded as one of the greatest films ever made, one of the greatest horror films ever made. And yes, the director is, if you couldn't tell by now, Roman Polanski. And the review is of his 1968 masterpiece, I'll call it a masterpiece, Rosemary's Baby. And yes, this is just a cheap Paramount DVD that I picked up. This is one that I've said that I don't usually upgrade. I would upgrade to a Criterion of this because I do love this film very much. The only other film of his I have will be Repulsion, which I have the Criterion. I've reviewed The Tenant, but I don't own it. And yes, I'm not going to discuss Polanski's crime in here because it's not about that. But again, I'm not complimenting the man as a person. I'm just talking about his art. And this came out before he was in any kind of trouble. In fact, this came out even before his wife was murdered. I think a lot of people forget, and I'm not defending him, but I think a lot of people forget that his wife was Sharon Tate, 9 months pregnant, killed by the Manson family, which is one of the allegedly cursed aspects of this film. It does have a demonic aspect to it. A woman gives birth to the son of the devil. So like The Exorcist, like The Omen, like Poltergeist, is believed to be cursed. And some people had some very poor fates after this film. But before I get into all that, yes, it was written and directed by Roman Polanski. But getting past all that, it's based on the book Ira Levin, but Polanski, when he wrote the screenplay, he did model a lot of it off the original novel, even lifting direct dialogue and situations. It was produced by William Castle, who's he's always been known as like Hitchcock's rival, but he's known specifically for low-budget horror films and putting himself in the marketing and everything. He did House on Haunted Hill, stuff like that. He produced it. Stars Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes, Ruth Gordon, who would go on to win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for this film, Cindy Blackmer, Maurice Evans, Ralph Bellamy, and an early appearance by Charles Grodin, who I do like as an actor, and he passed away recently. William A. Fraker did the cinematography, and Christoph Komina composed the music. Released in 1968, it was made on a budget of $3.2 million, and it made $33.4 million. And even Tarantino has gone on to state, because he thinks this is one of the greatest movies of all time, he said, he talks about how this made 30 plus million at a time where monster hits really only made, like, if a movie made 10 million, that was like Jaws back then. That was like Jurassic Park. And it came out the same year as 2001 Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes, Night of the Living Dead. I'd probably still say Night of the Living Dead is my favorite horror film of 68, probably my favorite film of 68. But again, this is a top 20 horror film for me. And it is a lot like The Exorcist in the sense that it's depicted very realistically. And it is very slow paced. It runs at 2 hours and 16 minutes, so it is rather lengthy. And there was one magazine that in a review it said it's the best horror movie with no horror because it is all told realistically, and it's not up until the final sequence of the film does it all come together. I mean, I'll explain that in a bit, but it is kind of a return to form for Polanski because he did have some duds. He did. I can't even remember the names of the two films. I think he made two films between this and a Repulsion. I'm just trying to. Cul-de-sac and Dance of the Vampires. But like Repulsion, it's about a woman which, yes, she was raped by the devil. She is carrying the devil's child. There is this coven, this satanic cult surrounding her, micromanaging the hell out of her pregnancy, including her husband. Her husband is wrapped up in it. And it's just this growing sense of tension, this growing paranoia. And it's told in a way that, Polanski wanted Rosemary to be like an unreliable narrator, which is why you don't see anything supernatural throughout the film. Everything can be explained. So it can look like, she is going crazy. This is all in her head, much like Repulsion, but to a very drastic level. At the very end, it is all revealed that no, it's not all in her head. Yes, it is all brought on by a satanic cult, and she did give birth to the devil. I'm really not going to go into the plot because, again, what more can I say about the plot that hasn't been said already? I mean, this is consistently up there with The Exorcist, The Omen. Not just for movies dealing with the devil, but even if you haven't seen it, you know the story. Excuse me. And the grand success of this film, because again, 30 plus million back in 68. I mean, movies like The Sound of Music made that much, but it played for years straight. So during its initial run, that really was like Jaws in 75 when it broke 100 million. I was just trying to, but yeah, it spawned the massive success of it. Not just The Exorcist and The Omen that deals with either possession or the son of the devil, but also lower budget films like The Brotherhood of Satan, A Mark of the Devil, which I will be reviewing. I did just pick that up. Black Noon and Blood on Satan's Claw. It did usher in the 1970s Satan craze in horror films. I'm sure also the theme is something I'm sure everyone's heard. I mean, la da da da, la da 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 da. I think that's how it goes. I mean, it's been referenced so many times. Even Cable Guy with Jim Carrey. There's a part where he's on the phone and he's just like, la 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 la, which is actually, that's actually Mia Farrow doing the vocals. But the score is wonderful. Fur Elise, the classical piece for Elise, shows up numerous times in Rosemary's apartment. But the actual score, some parts that sound like a theremin, it has this very Italian giallo sound to it, which I love. Or like the part when she's in the elevator trying to escape her husband and her doctor. It's like this almost like jazzy horn that's like going crazy. It really fits the tension and the paranoia and everything of the scene. I guess just the cliff notes of the film. Rosemary, played by Mia Farrow, which originally Sharon Tate wanted this role. There were other ones like Goldie Hawn and Tuesday Weld and a few other actresses were considered, but Sharon Tate wanted it. But Mia Farrow was known for a popular television series, so Paramount pushed for her, even though she was engaged to Polanski at the time. And actually, Farrow was married to Frank Sinatra at the time, and he wanted her to be in a film that he was in, and when she chose to do this, he got so mad that he handed her divorce papers on the set. And of course, the following year is when Sharon Tate, 9 months pregnant, would be killed by a satanic cult, Manson family. And then just some other things like John Lennon. 12 years later, John Lennon was shot outside the building where their apartments are. Producer William Castle got a bunch of hate mail for being part of the film, so much so that it's believed the stress caused him kidney stones, that the drugs they gave him in the hospital made him hallucinate, where he was calling out, Rosemary, drop the knife. He was hallucinating the movie. The author of the novel, Ira Levin, his wife, left him, I think, the following year. He did write a sequel, but it was very poorly received. It was like 30 years later. There's actually a number of sequels to this. There was one, it was remade in 2014, which I haven't seen. It was a made-for-TV movie. But there was another TV movie in 76 called What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. Of course, in 2008, Michael Bay, Andrew Form, and Brad Filler, Platinum Dudes, were going to remake it, but that never came through. Because they really like doing the older classics. Like, first they did Texas Chainsaw, then they did Amityville Horror. Of course, they wanted to tackle this one. I believe they did The Omen. There was a Turkish remake, the anthology film XX, that I believe is on Hulu. It's an anthology. The segment Her Only Living Son is an unofficial sequel to this. So it definitely has a legacy. But, and then some other things, like, I guess, Cassavetes and Polanski's friendship was tarnished after this. There was, it might not be as cursed or tragic as some other films, but it still has some darkness behind it. And then, of course, Polanski will go on to do what he did, but anyway. But Mia Farrow plays Rosemary Woodhouse. Her husband, Guy Woodhouse, played by John Cassavetes. They move into this apartment building in Manhattan. Down the hall is the elderly couple, the Cassavetes, which I believe they were named after the actor. I don't remember what their name was in the novel. But there's a young woman that lives with them that Rosemary meets, and then she's found dead outside from an apparent suicide. She's wearing this one charm that has a foul odor coming out of it. But then the Cassavetes take a liking to Rosemary. They give her the charm. They seem like a very nice couple, very cultured, very welcoming. Roman Cassavetes, the husband, does talk a lot about, hypocrisy in a religion. There is some social commentary in this, like definitely women's liberation and control, because Rosemary is very submissive and childlike. She actually reminds me a lot of Shelley Duvall from The Shining. She doesn't get as hysterical, but still very doe-eyed, sweet, very adorable. Can't help but love her. And then Guy, who's a struggling actor, he decides that they should have a baby. They do, only she seems to get a little drunk, and then the chocolate mousse that the Cassavetes drop off, she says has a chalky aftertaste. She goes into a drug-induced haze hallucination, which some of the effects are green screen, like when she's on a boat or floating on her bed in the water. It is green screen. It does look dated, but I think that adds to the dreamy quality of it, the dreamy atmosphere of it. And then, we also see what's going on outside her when she's naked on this bed. There's all these elderly naked people, including the Cassavetes and Guy. And then she visions these arms that look like giant scales, almost like tree bark and hair. And then we get the up close of these like yellow eyes where the pupils go this way. Bunch of hair, almost like a wolf. And she's raped. And again, like, nothing supernatural happens. That's how Polanski wanted it. And I think that is the best idea for it, except for the very ending when they don't show the baby. I know there's probably a lot of people out there who want to see the baby and probably don't like it because they didn't. But even Polanski said showing the baby would have been a mistake. Because, yes, in the book, he does have horn buds and a tail. He does look like a demon hybrid. But not showing it adds to the realism. And also, all you need is Mia Farrow's reaction. When she walks up to the bassinet, looks in, and the camera just holds on her face, she just gives that reaction. One, it's one of the most iconic shots in all of horror. Definitely one of my favorites. And it's not until she yells, "What have you done to its eyes?" does it imply that something supernatural is going on. By cutting out all the supernatural shit throughout the film, it really does help give off the atmosphere, like, well, is she really going crazy? Is it all in her head? Are there people really after her? Is there something else going on? Because even though I haven't seen the remake, so I don't know what they do, but if a movie like this was made today, it would be full of jump scares and supernatural stuff going on nonstop. And it was very smart of Polanski to go that route, because it does make the ending more of a payoff. It does make it more subtle, realistic, but it also just makes the tension, the paranoia, and everything just rise gradually. And of course, they make her go to this certain doctor, Dr. Saperstein. They micromanage the shit out of her pregnancy. They make her take this certain vitamin shake every day. They question her about every phone call she makes, every visitor she has, every book she reads. They really keep her on a leash and watch her at all times. And Mia Farrow, I don't know if she was nominated for an Oscar. I want to say she was at least nominated, but she didn't win. The only win was Ruth Gordon, who played Minnie. But multiple Golden Globe nominations, and 2 Academy Award nominations. So no, the other Academy Award was Best Screenplay, I believe. Yeah, based on material from another medium. So Polanski took that Oscar. And then she notices small bits, like people around her either die or have something happen to them. Someone leaves behind a clue. She starts putting it together that these people are not who they say they are. And she comes to the conclusion that they're witches. I remember the first time I saw this, I was in my old apartment. I was by myself. I smoked a joint that was given to me that was rather strong. And I remember getting to like the third act of this film and almost having a panic attack because this movie does do such a good job at really bringing you along with Rosemary. Everything she finds out or feels or sees, we all feel, hear, and see at the same time. We know just as much as she does, because it's also about her lack of control. Like they withhold important information from her, make her like all the things I said before. They also make her wear that charm with the foul smell. And eventually, it does kind of turn in almost into an escape film at one point because she leaves her apartment. She goes to her first doctor, played by Charles Grodin. He puts her, like, he has her rest. You think she's going to go to the hospital. Everything's going to be fine. Then she wakes up and her husband and Saperstein is there. And then when she gets back to the apartment, I mean, that's when it's people holding her down, giving her shots. Bunch of people in there. There's a bunch of people in on it. And like The Shining, it is this gradual build-up of, I'm going to keep saying, tension and paranoia. Because that's really what makes this film. And again, just having no supernatural elements and the fact that everything can be explained. Because you do find out, essentially, I think the reason why Guy agreed to, Rosemary being the one to carry the Devil's Child was so that they would be rewarded and his acting career would take off. This one play he was going for, he was, I think, an understudy of this one guy who went blind, and so that's how he got it. She finds out that Guy had his pipe, and this is when she finds out that if you have a certain possession, then you can cast a spell. But like when she calls the guy to check in on him, she says, aren't you missing your pipe? He's like, oh yeah, and I have his. We got mixed up. Or her friend Hutch that tries to set up a meeting so we can tell her, yeah, they're witches. He realizes that his glove is missing from a house party they had. So that's the possession that they had for him. He falls into a coma, so she never gets her lunch meeting. But he comes out of the coma, and before he dies, which the composer died the same fate. He fell into a coma, then died sometime later. One of his nurses or whatever sends Rosemary the book that he said, make sure she gets this. And it's all about witches. You find out Roman Cassavet is the son of this notorious cultist that was in the building. But I mean, I didn't really want to go into the plot this much, but I guess for context, it is all building up until they take her back from Charles Grodin's. She's able to get in the elevator and bring it up, get to her apartment, lock him out, and then she's in the bedroom. There's even a scene when she's on the phone and we see characters like sneak by in the background. That's when they all hold her down, give her shots. She gives birth, but they tell her it died. She hears a baby crying. Guy tells her, oh, these new tenants have a kid. But then one night, she looks in this one closet, and that there's a secret door behind it that goes into the Cassavetes apartment. She goes in, and that's when we get the famous scene with the blue bathrobe and the kitchen knife. Sees all these people sitting there with the black bassinet. And that's when she approaches it. And again, I can't praise Polanski enough for, one, narratively, just not showing supernatural elements, not showing the baby, but also how it's filmed. There's a lot of POV shots. All the close-ups of Rosemary are at like eye level. And I think it's called mise en scene, which are these long cuts that like follow characters around the room, but it doesn't move from where it's at. It doesn't draw attention to certain things. It's shot beautifully. Some POV shots is like she realizes that has this craving for raw meat. So like she's eating this raw meat. Then she looks over at the toaster. She's like back two. We see her back two. Then the camera kind of pans down at the toaster. And we see her look over herself eating raw meat and blood. Then she gets sick. A shot of her feeling ill. She's like sitting in front of the TV. It's this upward shot. That looks great. Of course, any shot down a corridor or anything like that. The sequences when she's drugged is like this very kind of disorientating or shaky kind of look. It's shot beautifully. The score is wonderful. And yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say about it. I really don't care to see the sequels. The remake I'll probably see at some point just to rant on it. I know it's not going to be as good as this, but I doubt it's even good to begin with. But I will say this is my favorite film of Polanski's. These would be my top two. I definitely think Farrow deserved to be nominated, at least nominated for an Oscar. And Polanski really pushed her too. Like the scene where she walks into traffic and there's cars almost hitting her. That wasn't a blocked off street with stunt drivers. That was actual functioning traffic. Of course, the condition was Polanski had to operate the camera himself, and she was willing to do it. She just walked into traffic. Also, I'm sure the haircut helped because she didn't look like this throughout the whole film. But like she comes home, she's got that short hair, and they use makeup to make her pale, put bags under her eyes. She's supposedly losing weight instead of gaining during the pregnancy, up until she's right about to give birth. But she really does look sickly, tired, in pain, stressed. She definitely doesn't look healthy. And I don't know how method she might have gone, like if she did deprive herself of sleep or food, but she really does look, pale, bags, like she's going crazy. And another thing is people just keep like belittling, and every time someone sees her with a haircut, they tell how awful she looks, how sick she looks, how tired she looks, her haircut's awful. Her husband pretty much bullies her into doing whatever he wants her. Like, initially with the chocolate mousse, she doesn't want to eat it. He just kind of like, well, fine, just don't eat it if you don't want to. The poor lady worked on it all day. So she's very submissive, very easy to push around, but she's also very innocent and childlike. Like, there's so many scenes where she'll just say, like, we went and saw a play. And she's all excited like a child, just smiling. Like, just like nods happily a lot. And yet, it doesn't feel like a horror film. I mean, it opens up with a horror sounding lullaby like the la 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 la. But it's beautiful, sunny Manhattan, sky shot of the streets and buildings with this elegant pink cursive titles. Yeah, Polanski was really going for not making it feel like a horror film until the very end. And I know people will argue that it's not horror, that it's a drama or a thriller. Because people even say that about, The Exorcist. It's not a horror film up until, like, the ending, that it has horror elements. I'm like, The Exorcist is a fucking horror film. Just like this is. It just goes about it a different way. It goes through it with the realism. And the point was to make it feel like it could happen to you. Like, could this also just be some pregnancy delusion or whatever? And being able to have every aspect of why she's afraid being able to be explained and debunked just helps the paranoia even more. And I would definitely say that is what Polanski is good at. You watch these films, it's about a young woman who's just suffering these delusions, but swears they're real. Are they real? Are they not? Of course, in this, we know they are. I love the sequence at the end, just the way everyone is so Stepford wives, sitting there just hail Satan with their drinks. And she eventually, it's implied that she's going to be a mother to it. She sees this woman rocking the bassinet crazy hard, baby screaming and crying. Which I also like how the baby's name is Adrian, which sounds like Damien. I guess it just didn't catch on as much as Damien did. And she walks over and is like, you're rocking him too hard. That's why he's crying. And then Roman tells her, well, why don't you rock him? And she kind of does, and you see her kind of start to smile. But then the movie ends, so it implies that she's going to be a loving mother. But just the way it goes from this not supernatural, very realistic, very beautifully shot movie for 2 hours is pretty much the last 15 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes that she's in the apartment and the baby, it's revealed what's going on. When we find out, yes, it is the devil's baby. He has been born. It's not just this cult thing that's going to raise it as the devil's baby. Like, it was conceived, born, the Antichrist is on Earth, and everyone is saying, hail Satan. It's implied that the baby doesn't look normal because of her reaction. Again, I love that shot. Just, it stays on her as she goes to look in, and she covers her mouth and comes back up. Very iconic. Again, some people might say it's too slow, like The Exorcist, like The Omen, but it takes its time to build the characters. I mean, all the acting is solid. Oh, William Castle also has a cameo as the guy waiting in the phone booth. But anyway, all the acting solid. All the characters, really builds the characters. You can really feel the lapse of time. Like, it shows her outside once. You get a bell ringer dressed as Santa. Then they're having a New Year's party. And then, they're getting the air conditioner ready for summer. You really feel the passage of time, and, the pacing really helps that as well. It really feels like we're sitting through 9 months of time. But again, it's shot beautifully. Just the way the camera just sits there a lot of times and just lets things happen. Or, these wonderful, almost Kubrick-esque shots down a corridor. And I'm not sure what else I could say about it. I absolutely love this movie. It's a top 15 or a top 20 favorite of mine. Again, if you don't want to see it because it's a Polanski film, fine. But, you know, I find it weird to like something, then find out something about the director, and then say you dislike it. Because, I mean, the film itself hasn't changed. But, yeah, normally I don't upgrade, but I would definitely get a Criterion of this. It certainly spawned, no pun intended, the whole devil obsession in horror, both low budget schlock and the more Oscar nominated horror. I think this was one of the first. No, because whatever happened to Baby Jane had some Oscars behind it too. But this was Polanski's first American film. This was the one that made him an international success. But this is another one I would say is a perfect film. I mean, everything from the casting to... Although Jack Nicholson was considered for the role of Guy, and I do think that would have been pretty interesting, where he is still playing a bad guy, but we don't know it until the very end. It's just this growing suspicion. And just the way it builds suspense, tension, suspicion is flawless. The atmosphere is great. It's very claustrophobic. Like you're only safe in your apartment, but even then, eventually that's not safe enough. Then you can't trust anyone. You can't even trust a doctor. The build-up is excellent. That final sequence in the apartment with the bassinet is absolutely iconic. Definitely one of the best and one of my favorite ending sequences to a horror film. One of the best payoffs, and another great example as to why subtlety is key. I mean, because nowadays, it would have been like the CGI zombie baby from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Probably would have done something stupid like that. But not showing it, having the scare be what Rosemary's reaction is when she first looks at it, and then screams, "What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes? What have you done to it?" That's all we need. And that's horrifying enough. Our minds can fill in the blanks, but yeah, absolutely flawless. Excellent score. Whether it's the iconic lullaby in the beginning and at the end, or the very giallo sounding, almost theremin pieces, or the anxiety building horn section in the elevator. Everything is absolutely great. And I love this movie to death. But going on 40 minutes, I'm just going to start repeating myself. I feel like there's more I wanted to say, or more depth I wanted to get into, but absolutely solid film. I don't know why it took me so long to review it. I don't care if it's Roman Polanski. I love Rosemary's Baby. Definitely one of my favorites. But anyway, thank you for watching.